She witnessed something she was never meant to see. But when she became pregnant with his twins, the most feared mafia boss in Seoul made a choice that shattered his empire. He chose love over power. Welcome to the channel. I'm so glad you've joined us for another powerful story. Whether this is your first time here or you're a long-time listener, I'm thrilled to have you in our community. Before we get started, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. It's the best way to support the stories you love. Also, I love seeing how far our stories travel. Leave a comment below and let me know which part of the world you're watching from today. Now, let's jump straight into the story. Alicia Bennett never expected a wrong turn down a Seoul alleyway to seal her fate forever. One witness to violence, one moment of terror, and suddenly she was a prisoner in the gilded penthouse of Il Wukong, a mafia kingpin who ruled South Korea's underworld but had never known what it meant to protect something more precious than power. What began as captivity quickly transformed into a connection neither of them could deny. A love forged in danger, tested by betrayal, bloodshed, and a pregnancy that would make her the syndicate's greatest liability. Because when Alicia discovered she was carrying not one, but two heirs to his dark legacy, Il Wu faced an impossible choice: preserve the criminal empire he built with blood, or abandon everything to protect the woman carrying his redemption. The penthouse stretched endlessly in every direction. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing Seoul's glittering skyline, marble floors so polished Alicia could see her reflection trembling in them, furniture that probably cost more than her entire year abroad. It was breathtaking. It was suffocating. It was a prison dressed in luxury. Il Wu hadn't spoken to her since his men dragged her from that alleyway 3 days ago. He'd simply gestured to a bedroom suite twice the size of her studio apartment and disappeared behind a heavy door at the opposite end of the penthouse. She'd heard his voice occasionally. Low, commanding Korean punctuated by silence that felt like violence. She didn't need to understand the language to know he was giving orders. Orders that probably decided whether people lived or died. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But somewhere beneath the fear, anger had begun to simmer. On the fourth morning, Alicia walked out of her gilded cage and into the main living space. Il Wu sat at the dining table, a stark figure in black against the morning light, documents spread before him like battle plans. His tattooed hand moved across paper with decisive strokes. He didn't look up. "I want to go home," she said, hating how small her voice sounded in all that space. "No." The word was final, emotionless. "You can't just keep me here like some." "I can." Now he looked at her, and those dark eyes held something she hadn't expected. Exhaustion. "And I will. Until it's safe." "Safe from what?" "From you." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "From what you saw. From the people who know you saw it." He set down his pen with careful precision. "You think I want you here? You think I enjoy having a witness to my life sleeping down the hall?" The honesty startled her. "Then let me go. I'll disappear. I'll leave Korea. They'll find you." He stood, and she forced herself not to step back. "In Seoul, in America, anywhere. The only reason you're breathing right now is because you're under my protection. That penthouse door is the line between your life and your death. Believe that or don't. But you're not leaving." The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Alicia studied him in the harsh morning light, the elegant brutality of his features, the ink that crawled up his neck like dark poetry, the expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the violence coiled beneath. He looked like a man who'd forgotten how to sleep, who'd forgotten what peace even felt like. "How long?" she finally asked. "I don't know." "That's not good enough." Something flickered across his face. Almost respect. "No, it's not." The days blurred together after that. Il Wu left before dawn and returned after midnight, always with that same exhausted wariness. Alicia explored her prison, discovered a library filled with books in 3 languages, a kitchen stocked with food she didn't know how to prepare, a terrace she wasn't allowed to step onto. She was surrounded by everything and connected to nothing. One evening, she found Il Wu on the terrace she'd been forbidden to use. He stood at the railing, soul sprawling beneath him like a kingdom he'd conquered but couldn't enjoy. A cigarette burned between his fingers, forgotten. I thought I wasn't allowed out here, she said. He didn't turn. You're not. But he didn't send her away. So Alicia stepped forward until she stood beside him, close enough to feel the tension radiating from his frame. Do you ever get lonely? The question escaped before she could stop it. Up here in your tower, surrounded by people who fear you? Il-woo was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, every single day, she looked at his profile. Sharp, severe, devastatingly sad. Me too. Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition. Two people trapped in different kinds of isolation, standing at the edge of the same abyss. Il-woo finally turned to face her, and for the first time since that alleyway, she saw him as something other than a monster. She saw him as a man who'd built an empire out of loneliness and called it power. I'm sorry, he said quietly, that you saw what you saw, that you're here, that I can't let you go. Alicia nodded, throat tight. I'm sorry too, that you have to live like this. The city glittered below them, beautiful and merciless, as the space between captor and captive began to blur into something neither of them had words for yet. Alicia is trapped in a world where one wrong word could be her last. If you think she's brave for facing a lion in his den, hit subscribe now and tell us. Would you stay or run? The conference room door was solid oak, but it did nothing to muffle the voices inside. Alicia had been reaching for a book in the hallway when the meeting started, and now she stood frozen, listening to Il-woo's world bleed through the wood. Boss, with all respect, keeping the American here is dangerous. The voice was sharp, confident in a way that suggested the speaker had earned the right to challenge. She's a liability. Every day she stays increases our risk. I'm aware of the risk, Jae-sung. Il-woo's tone held warning. Then you understand why she needs to be handled. Permanently. Alicia's blood went cold. She should walk away. She should run back to her room and pretend she hadn't heard. But her feet wouldn't move. The matter is closed. Il-woo's words were ice. Is it? Jae-sung's voice took on an edge that made Alicia's skin crawl. Or are you keeping her for other reasons? I've seen the way you look at her, Hyung. Like she's something precious instead of a problem. The men are talking. They're saying you've gone soft over some foreign. The sound of a chair scraping violently against floor. Then silence so absolute it roared. When Il-woo spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, and that made it infinitely more terrifying. Finish that sentence. I want to hear you finish it. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. She's making you weak. And weakness in our world. Get out. Hyung, I'm trying to protect. I said get out. Before I forget we grew up together. Footsteps approached the door. Alicia stumbled backward, but too late. The door swung open and Jae-sung emerged, his face flushed with barely contained rage. He was younger than Il-woo, handsome in a cold way, with eyes that swept over Alicia like she was something he'd scrape off his shoe. Enjoying the show. His English was perfect, dripping with contempt. You think you're special? You're just a distraction. And distractions don't last long around here. That's enough. Il-woo filled the doorway behind him, a wall of controlled fury. Jae-sung turned, and something ugly twisted his features. You're protecting her feelings now? This is pathetic. She's nobody. Just another American who wandered where she didn't belong. Il-woo moved faster than Alicia could track. One moment Jae-sung was standing, the next he was slammed against the hallway wall, Il-woo's hand wrapped around his throat. The violence was surgical, precise, terrifying in its restraint. Nobody. Il-woo's voice was deadly calm. You think you can stand in my home, look at someone under my protection, and call them nobody? His grip tightened. You think because we have history, I won't end you right here? Jae-sung's face was turning red, but his eyes held defiance even as he struggled to breathe. She is under my protection, Il-woo continued, each word deliberate. That makes her untouchable. That makes her more valuable than your opinion, your concern, or your life. Do you understand? A strangled sound that might have been yes. If I hear you've spoken to her, looked at her wrong, or even thought about her disrespectfully again, I will personally make sure you regret every second of your existence." He released Jae-sung, who collapsed against the wall, gasping, "Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about our childhood." Jae-sung staggered toward the elevator, one hand at his throat, shooting Alicia a look of pure venom before disappearing behind closing doors. The silence that followed was deafening. Il-woo stood with his back to her, shoulders rigid, hands clenched into fists. The violence still hung in the air between them like smoke. "You didn't have to do that," Alicia whispered. He turned slowly, and the expression on his face stole her breath. It wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous. Possession mixed with something that looked almost like fear. "Yes," he said quietly, intensely. "I did." He crossed the distance between them in 3 steps, stopping close enough that she could see the pulse hammering in his throat, the slight tremor in his tattooed hands. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "No one disrespects you. Not in my home. Not in my city. Not while you're under my protection." His eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Do you understand what that means?" Alicia did. She understood perfectly. And that's what terrified her. Because somewhere between captivity and protection, Il-woo had stopped seeing her as a problem to solve. He'd started seeing her as something worth destroying his own brotherhood to defend. Il-woo just showed his teeth to protect her. But is it love or just obsession? Don't let this story slip away. Subscribe to see his transformation and comment, "Protect," if you believe in their spark. Three weeks of penthouse walls had started to feel like slow suffocation. Alicia stood at the window every night, watching Seoul pulse with life she couldn't touch, feeling more like a ghost than a prisoner. So when Il-woo appeared in her doorway at 11 p.m. wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket instead of his usual tailored suit, she almost didn't recognize him. "Get dressed," he said. "Something you'd wear to go out. We're leaving." She blinked. "Leaving? You said I couldn't." "I said you couldn't leave alone. Tonight you're with me." Something flickered in his eyes. "Unless you'd rather stay locked up here." Alicia was moving toward her closet before he finished speaking. 20 minutes later, they slipped out through a private garage entrance. Just the two of them in a matte black car that probably cost more than most people's homes. No guards. No entourage. Il-woo drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked almost relaxed. "Where are we going?" Alicia asked as the city lights blurred past. "Somewhere I go when I need to remember I'm human." The club was underground, literally, down a narrow staircase in an alley that looked like nothing special. But the moment they descended, Alicia felt the shift. Low amber lighting, velvet booth seating, music that thrummed in her chest rather than assaulted her ears. Intimate. Exclusive. The kind of place that didn't exist on any map. The bartender nodded at Il-woo with familiarity but no fear. That alone told Alicia this place was different. This was neutral ground. They claimed a corner booth, shadows wrapping around them like a cocoon. Il-woo ordered in Korean, and moments later, 2 drinks appeared. Something amber and expensive looking for him, something sweet and dangerous for her. "You come here often?" She couldn't help the slight tease in her voice. "When I need to disappear." He took a sip, eyes on her over the rim of his glass. "When I need to be someone other than who I am." "And who are you here?" "Just a man having a drink." He set his glass down, and the corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Just Il-woo. Not boss. Not kingpin. Not the person everyone either fears or wants dead." The music shifted, something slower, more sensual. Alicia watched the way the amber light played across Il-woo's features, softening the harsh lines, making the tattoos on his neck look like art instead of warnings. He'd rolled up his sleeves, and she could see more ink trailing down his forearms, intricate patterns that probably held stories he'd never tell. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For this." for getting me out of that beautiful cage. You were going crazy up there. I could see it. His eyes held hers. I know what isolation looks like. I've lived it my whole life. Even before all this. Especially before. He leaned back, and for a moment she glimpsed the boy he might have been. Orphaned at 12. Raised by the streets and then by men who saw potential in my anger. I've been alone in crowds my entire life, Alicia. Until. He stopped, jaw tightening. Until what? Ailwu looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Until you started looking at me like I might be something other than a monster. The confession hung between them, raw and dangerous. Alicia knew she should pull back, maintain distance. Remember, he was still the man who'd taken her freedom. But 3 weeks of seeing his exhaustion, his loneliness, his strange careful kindness had blurred every line she'd drawn. Dance with me, she heard herself say. His eyes widened slightly. Here. No one's watching. You said it yourself, you're just Ailwu here. And I'm just Alicia. 2 people who are tired of being alone. He stood, extending his hand with a hesitation that seemed impossible for someone so powerful. When she took it, his fingers closed around hers with devastating gentleness. The small dance floor was mostly empty. Ailwu pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other still holding hers. They moved slowly, barely swaying, but it felt like the most intimate thing Alicia had ever experienced. This is dangerous, he murmured against her hair. What we're doing. What I'm feeling. I know. She tilted her head back to look at him. I'm terrified. Good. You should be. But his hand tightened on her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. Because I don't think I can let you go anymore. Even when it's safe. Even when I should. The confession should have scared her. Instead, Alicia rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Ailwu went rigid with shock, then surrendered with a sound that was almost pain. His kiss was hungry and desperate, like a man who'd been starving and finally found sustenance. His hands cupped her face with a tenderness that contradicted everything she knew about him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, the world had shifted on its axis. We should go back, Ailwu said, but he didn't move. We should, Alicia agreed, but her hands were fisted in his jacket. They stayed on that dance floor until the club closed, holding each other like lifelines, pretending for just a few hours that they were normal people who'd met in normal ways, falling into something that might have been love if their circumstances had been different. But circumstances were never different for people like them. And the price for this stolen night would come due sooner than either of them imagined. Under the neon lights, the Mafia Boss just let his guard down. Do you think a killer can truly change for a woman? Subscribe now and drop a love sticker, the comments if you're rooting for this forbidden love. Alicia had been ignoring the signs for 2 weeks. The exhaustion she blamed on captivity. The nausea she attributed to stress. The way her body felt foreign, different, changed in ways she couldn't quite name. But when she missed her second period and found herself dizzy standing up from Ailwu's breakfast table, denial became impossible. The pregnancy test sat on the marble bathroom counter like an accusation. 2 pink lines. Unmistakable. Undeniable. She took 3 more tests. All positive. Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection. 4 weeks. Maybe 5. Which meant it happened that night at the club, or one of the nights after when they'd stopped pretending they could stay away from each other. When Ailwu would slip into her room after midnight and they'd reach for each other like drowning people reaching for air. A baby. She was carrying Ailwu's baby. A mafia kingpin's child growing inside her while she was still technically his prisoner. The laugh that escaped her throat sounded unhinged. She didn't tell him immediately. Couldn't. For 3 days, she carried the secret like a grenade with the pin pulled, knowing the explosion was inevitable but terrified of the blast radius. Ailwu noticed something was wrong. He always noticed, but she deflected with kisses and reassurances that felt like lies. On the 4th day, she woke to find him already dressed for some meeting, standing at the foot of her bed with concern etched into his features. You need to see a doctor, he said without preamble. You're pale. You barely eat. Something's wrong. I'm fine. You're not. He crossed his arms, immovable. I'm having my personal physician come this afternoon. Don't argue. The doctor arrived at 2 p.m., an elegant woman in her 50s who'd probably seen everything the underworld had to offer and learned to keep her mouth shut about it. She examined Alicia in private, professional and thorough, asking questions in accented English while Il Wu paced the hallway outside like a caged animal. When the examination ended, Dr. Kim's expression was carefully neutral. I'd like to do an ultrasound. Just to confirm. Alicia's heart stopped. Confirm what? That you're approximately 6 weeks pregnant. And unless I'm very mistaken. She adjusted the portable ultrasound machine. There appear to be 2 heartbeats. The world tilted sideways. 2. Twins. Does he know? Dr. Kim asked gently. Alicia shook her head, unable to speak. Would you like me to tell him, or would you prefer? I'll do it. The words came out strangled. Dr. Kim nodded, packing up her equipment with practiced efficiency. I'll need to see you weekly. The first trimester is critical, especially with multiples. And given your unique situation, we'll need to be extra cautious. Unique situation. That was one way to describe being pregnant with a crime lord's twins while living in gilded captivity. Il Wu was in the room the moment Dr. Kim left, his face carved from stone. What did she say? What's wrong? Alicia stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. Seoul glittered below, indifferent to the bomb she was about to drop. Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. I'm just... She turned to face him. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Il Wu stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. His face went through a dozen expressions in as many seconds. Shock, disbelief, something that might have been joy before fear swallowed it whole. Pregnant, he repeated, the word foreign in his mouth. With twins. He actually stumbled backward, catching himself on the arm of a chair. Twins. You're carrying. We're. His hand went to his mouth, then through his hair, destroying its careful styling. How long have you known? 4 days. I was scared to tell you. Scared. He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands cupping her face with devastating gentleness. Scared of what? Of this. Of what it means. Of what it makes us. Tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. Il Wu, I'm carrying the children of a mafia boss. Do you understand how insane that is? How dangerous? His thumbs wiped at her tears, and his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Raw, unfiltered terror mixed with fierce protectiveness. I know exactly how dangerous it is. Which is why everything changes. Right now. What do you mean? Before he could answer, his phone erupted with calls. One after another. He ignored them all until a text made him go rigid. He read it, and the color drained from his face. What? What is it? Dr. Kim. His voice was hollow. Someone got to her between leaving here and reaching her car. They know, Alicia. The syndicate knows you're pregnant. He looked at her with eyes full of devastation. And Jae-sung is calling an emergency council meeting to discuss the foreign woman carrying the boss's heirs. The golden cage had just become a target. And their children hadn't even been born yet. Twins. Everything just changed, and the stakes are now life and death. If you've ever fought for your family against all odds, subscribe right now and welcome Alicia to motherhood in the comments. The video call connected at 3 a.m. Seoul time, which meant her mother was having afternoon coffee in Charleston. Alicia had been avoiding this for weeks, but pregnant with twins and trapped in a world she couldn't explain, she needed to hear her mother's voice even if she couldn't tell her the truth. Baby girl. Her mother's face filled the screen, all warmth and worry. Finally. I've been calling and calling. Where have you been? I'm sorry, Mama. Work's been crazy. The lie tasted like ash. Work. Her mother's eyes narrowed with that maternal radar that had caught every teenage deception. Alicia Marie Bennett, you look exhausted. Are you eating? Are you safe over there? I'm fine. I promise. Another lie, each one building a wall between them. Don't you, I'm fine me. I talked to your landlord. You know Mr. Kim from your apartment? He said you haven't been there in over a month. Said your rent's being paid but you're never home. Her mother leaned closer to the camera. Where are you really staying? Alicia's throat tightened. She wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to collapse into confession, to beg her mother to somehow fix this impossible situation. But what could she say? I witnessed a murder and now I'm pregnant with a crime lord's twins and I think I might love him even though he terrifies me? I'm staying with someone. It's complicated. Complicated. Her mother's voice sharpened. Baby, are you in trouble? Because your brother can be on a plane tomorrow. We can come get you. No. The word came out too forceful. Mama, please. I'm okay. I'm figuring things out. Behind her mother, her father's voice called out. That's Alicia. Let me talk to my daughter. Charles, hold on. But her father was already crowding into frame, his pastor's collar visible, his face etched with concern that made guilt knife through her chest. Sweetheart, your mother's worried sick. We haven't heard from you properly in weeks. What's going on? Daddy, her voice cracked, and she saw the moment his worry transformed into alarm. Alicia. What happened? Did someone hurt you? Yes, she wanted to scream. And no. And I don't know anymore because the man who took my freedom gave me something I never expected and now I'm carrying his children and I'm terrified and I don't know how to come home because home isn't home anymore. I'm okay, she whispered. I promise. I just need you to trust me right now. The look her parents exchanged spoke volumes. Her mother reached for her father's hand, and Alicia watched them anchor each other the way they'd done for 30 years of marriage. The way she and Il Wu would never be able to do in public. In daylight. In the normal world. We love you, baby, her mother said quietly. But we're scared. And if you don't call us by the end of the week, your brother's coming to get you. Complicated or not. The call ended, and Alicia sat in the dark, one hand pressed to her still flat stomach, feeling more alone than she'd ever felt in her life. She didn't hear Il Wu enter until he spoke from the doorway. The council meeting is in an hour. His voice was empty, exhausted. They're demanding I attend. She turned to find him disheveled, his shirt untucked, his usually perfect hair in disarray. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 24 hours. What will they say? That I've compromised the organization. That bringing you here, keeping you, getting you pregnant. He stopped, jaw clenching. That it shows weakness. That a boss who chooses a woman over the brotherhood isn't fit to lead. And what will you say? Il Wu moved into the room, and in the dim light, she could see the devastation in his eyes. My second in command, Min Ho, just called. He's one of the few who's still loyal. He told me Jae Sung has been building a coalition. Half the council wants me to handle the situation, to eliminate the complication before it becomes a liability. Alicia's hand went protectively to her stomach. Eliminate. You and the babies. His voice broke on the last word. They want me to prove my loyalty by erasing my family before it exists. And the other half want me to step down, to choose exile over leadership, to disappear with you and let someone else take control. He crossed to her, dropping to his knees in front of where she sat. His hands covered hers on her stomach, and his eyes were wet. Alicia, I built this empire from nothing, clawed my way up from the streets. The syndicate is everything I am, everything I've ever known. She knew what was coming, knew the choice he had to make. Her heart was already breaking. But you're carrying my children. His voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. You're carrying the only good thing I've ever created. And I look at you and I see a future I never thought I deserved. I see redemption I don't know how to accept. Il Wu. My uncles are waiting downstairs. Men who raised me, who taught me everything. They're asking me to choose. He pressed his forehead to her knees, and she felt his shoulders shake. How do I choose between the only family I've ever known and the family I'm building with you? Alicia's hands tangled in his hair, tears streaming down her face. Outside, Seoul glittered with 1,000 lights, each one representing a life untouched by this impossible choice. Maybe, she whispered, the real question is who you want to be, not who you've been. Il-woo looked up at her, and in his eyes, she saw the moment everything changed. The moment the Mafia Boss began his transformation into something he'd never been before. A father. A partner. A man willing to burn his empire for love. The Mafia uncles want her gone, and Il-woo is being forced to choose. Are you loyal to this family? Prove it by subscribing and telling us. Should he choose his bloodline or his bride? The first sign something was wrong came at dawn. Il-woo had left for the council meeting hours ago, taking most of his personal security with him. He'd left 2 guards at the penthouse. Young, loyal, competent. Alicia had watched from the window as his car disappeared into Seoul's early morning traffic, a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest with every second that passed. She was making tea in the kitchen when she heard the gunshots. 2 muffled pops that could have been anything except Alicia had lived in Il-woo's world long enough now to know exactly what they were. Her hands froze on the kettle. The apartment fell into a silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then footsteps. Multiple sets. Moving with purpose toward the penthouse door. Alicia ran. She made it to Il-woo's office, fingers fumbling with the lock he'd shown her weeks ago. The panic room hidden behind the bookshelf, accessible only to him and now her. But the mechanism stuck, refused to engage, and the apartment door exploded inward with a crash that seemed to shake the entire building. Find her. Quick. Before he gets back. The voice was unfamiliar, speaking Korean, but the intent was universal. Alicia abandoned the panic room and sprinted for the bedroom, her phone clutched in her sweating palm. She managed to hit Il-woo's number before rough hands grabbed her from behind. She screamed, fought, clawed at the arms that wrapped around her with brutal efficiency. A hand clamped over her mouth, cutting off her air, and she was dragged backward as her phone clattered to the floor. Shh. The man's breath was hot against her ear, his English heavily accented. Don't make this harder. Boss just wants to talk. There were 3 of them, all wearing black, all moving with military precision. Not Il-woo's men. The tattoos were wrong, the demeanor colder. These were professionals, and Alicia was their assignment. They zip-tied her wrists with practiced efficiency, and when she tried to scream again, duct tape sealed her mouth. One of them, the youngest, hesitated when his eyes dropped to her stomach. She's pregnant, he said in English, clearly for her benefit. Shin said nothing about. Shin said bring her. That's what we do. The leader checked his watch. We have 4 minutes before building security cycles back. Move. They hauled her toward the destroyed entrance, and Alicia's mind raced through pure panic. Her babies. She had to protect her babies. Had to find a way to. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor to chaos. Il-woo stood in the lobby like an avenging angel, gun in hand, his face a mask of murderous rage Alicia had never seen before. Behind him, a dozen of his men fanned out, weapons drawn. The marble floor was already stained with blood from the building's compromised security. Let her go. His voice was death itself. Let her go and I'll make it quick. The leader pressed a gun to Alicia's temple, and she felt the cold metal kiss her skin. Back away, Kong. This doesn't have to get messy. Shin just wants to negotiate. Shin is dead. Il-woo's words fell like stones. I killed him myself 20 minutes ago when I found out he contracted this hit. His entire operation is ash. His men are corpses. His legacy is erased. He took a step forward, and something in his eyes made even the hardened kidnapper flinch. You're the last loose end. Then we're all dead anyway. The gun pressed harder against Alicia's head. And she comes with us. Everything happened at once. Il-woo moved with inhuman speed. His shot so precise it dropped the leader before Alicia could blink. The other 2 men raised their weapons, but Il-woo's guards were faster, and suddenly the lobby erupted in gunfire that sounded like the end of the world. Alicia hit the ground hard, someone's body covering hers, and she curled instinctively around her stomach, around the precious lives growing inside her. The tape over her mouth muffled her screams as bullets pinged off marble and glass shattered and men shouted in Korean and English and the language of violence. Then silence. Terrible, ringing silence. Alicia. Il-woo's voice, ragged and desperate. Alicia, look at me. Are you hurt? The babies. Hands, his hands, gentle despite the blood coating them, turned her over. He ripped the tape from her mouth and cut the zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. His eyes searched her frantically, hands running over her body checking for injuries. I'm okay, she gasped. Il-woo, I'm okay. The babies. We need a doctor. Now. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. Get Dr. Kim here immediately. And I want every entrance to this building secured. No one gets in or out without my personal authorization. Alicia buried her face in his neck, breathing in gunpowder and expensive cologne and the scent that meant safety in her upside-down world. She could feel his heart hammering against her cheek, could feel the tremor in his arms that had nothing to do with her weight. I thought I lost you, he whispered against her hair. I heard your scream on the phone and I thought. His voice broke completely. We're okay. We're here. We're safe. But even as she said it, Alicia knew the truth. They would never be safe. Not while Il-woo wore the crown of his empire. Not while their children represented both his greatest strength and his most devastating weakness. The blood on the marble floor told a story written in violence and desperation. And this was only the beginning. They touched his pregnant woman, the biggest mistake they'll ever make. To see the monster Il-woo becomes to save his babies, you must be subscribed. Type justice in the comments below. Dr. Kim pronounced the twins healthy despite the trauma, but recommended bed rest and minimal stress. Il-woo had laughed at that, a hollow, broken sound that scared Alicia more than the kidnapping attempt. Minimal stress. As if such a thing existed in their world. He didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Alicia would wake at 3 a.m. to find him standing at the windows, silhouetted against Seoul's lights, shoulders rigid with the weight of impossible decisions. When she tried to approach, he'd kiss her forehead and retreat to his office, closing the door on conversations he wasn't ready to have. On the third night, he finally spoke. I've been building this empire since I was 17 years old. His voice came from the darkness of their bedroom. Alicia had thought he was asleep. 15 years of blood and strategy and sacrifice. I own half of Seoul's underground. Politicians take my calls. Rival syndicates fear my name. He paused. And in 3 seconds, a man I've never met almost took everything that matters from me. Alicia rolled over to face him. In the dim light, she could see the devastation carved into his features. You can't be both, she said quietly. Can you? No. The word was heavy as a tombstone. I thought I could. Thought I could protect you with my power, shield our children with my influence. But my power is exactly what puts you in danger. My empire isn't armor. It's a target painted on your back. He sat up, and she saw papers scattered across the bed. Financial documents. Property deeds. Pages of dense Korean text that probably represented his entire criminal infrastructure. What are these? My exit strategy. He picked up a document, hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was proposing. I've been liquidating assets for the past 48 hours. Selling legitimate businesses, transferring accounts, dismantling supply chains. By the end of the month, Il-woo Kong, the crime lord, will cease to exist. Alicia's breath caught. Il-woo, you can't just walk away. They'll never let you. I'm not asking permission. His eyes met hers, and they held a determination that was almost frightening. I'm offering them a choice. Accept my retirement and the orderly transition of power, or face a war that will destroy everything we've built. I've already spoken to the council. Half of them think I'm insane. The other half see an opportunity. And Jae-sung. Il-woo's jaw tightened. Jae-sung will be the next boss. He's been positioning himself for years. This is what he wanted, me gone, him in control. I'm giving him his kingdom. All I ask in return is that my family remains untouchable. You trust him to honor that? No. Which is why we're leaving Korea. The world tilted. Leaving. He reached for her hand, threading his blood-stained fingers through hers. I've purchased a property. Remote, secure, somewhere you can raise our children without looking over your shoulder. Somewhere I can be just a father instead of a boss. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm choosing you, Alicia. I'm choosing them. I'm choosing a life I never thought I deserved. Tears burned her eyes. You're giving up everything. No. He pulled her close, his hand settling on the small swell of her stomach. I'm finally gaining everything. The empire was always empty. Power without purpose. Control without connection. You showed me that. You and these babies showed me what actually matters. Your men will adapt, will follow Jae-sung, will forget about me within a year. His voice held no bitterness, only acceptance. That's the nature of this life. You're only valuable as long as you hold power. The moment you step down, you become history. A knock interrupted them. Min-ho, Il-woo's last loyal friend, entered with tablet in hand and exhaustion written across his face. Boss, the Zhao family is contesting the territory transfer. They're saying if you're leaving, everything should be renegotiated. He hesitated. And there's been chatter. Some of the younger lieutenants are calling you weak, saying a real boss would never abandon his throne for a woman. Il-woo stood, and despite his casual clothes, despite the tenderness he'd just shown, the crime lord snapped back into place like armor. Schedule a meeting with Zhao. And as for the lieutenants questioning my strength, his smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Remind them that I'm still boss until the transition is complete. And I'm happy to demonstrate exactly how weak I am. Min-ho nodded and left. The door closed, and Il-woo's shoulders sagged immediately, the armor cracking to reveal the exhausted man underneath. How long? Alicia asked. How long until we can leave? 3 weeks. Maybe 4. I need to ensure every loose end is tied, every enemy neutralized, every potential threat eliminated. He returned to bed, pulling her into his arms with desperate tenderness. And then we disappear. We become normal people with normal lives. We raise our twins somewhere they'll never know what their father used to be. Alicia pressed her ear to his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Do you think you can really walk away? After 15 years. His hand stroked her hair, and when he spoke, his voice held something she'd never heard before. Hope mixed with terror. For you. For them. He kissed the top of her head. I'd burn the world. Outside, Seoul pulsed with the empire he was dismantling piece by piece. Inside, a crime lord held the woman carrying his redemption and tried to believe that love could be stronger than legacy. That a man built from violence could rebuild himself into something gentle. That sacrifice could lead to salvation. The grand exit had begun. And there was no turning back. He's burning his empire to the ground just to hold her hand. That is real power. If this sacrifice moved your heart, subscribe to our journey and comment. What would you give up for true love? The meeting was set for midnight in the warehouse where Il-woo had killed his first man at 19. Full circle, he'd told Alicia. Poetic justice or karmic punishment. He wasn't sure which. She'd begged to come. He'd refused. This was his world, his violence, his reckoning. She would wait at the penthouse with Min-ho and enough security to withstand a small army. In 2 days, they'd leave Korea forever. But first, Il-woo had to survive this final stand. The warehouse was exactly as he remembered. Concrete floors stained with decades of blood, exposed beams overhead like ribs of some metal beast, the smell of rust and old violence. His entire council waited in a semicircle. 20 men who'd sworn loyalty to him and now watched with the cold calculation of predators sensing weakness. Jae-sung stood at the center, dressed in a sharp suit that was almost an insult, already playing the part of boss before the crown had been officially passed. Hyung. Jae-sung's greeting held no warmth. You're late. I'm here. That's what matters. Il-woo walked to the center of the circle, refusing to show the exhaustion dragging at his bones. 3 weeks of dismantling an empire had aged him. But tonight, he needed to be the kingpin one last time. Let's finish this. Finish. Jae-sung circled him slowly, a shark scenting blood. That's an interesting word. You're not finishing anything, Hyung. You're running. Abandoning everything we built because some foreign woman spread her legs and suddenly you're playing house. The insult hung in the air. Il-woo's hands clenched, but he forced them to relax. This was the game. Jae-sung needed to prove Il-woo was weak, needed the council to see the great boss reduced to nothing. I'm retiring, Il-woo said calmly. Transferring power according to our traditions. You should be grateful. Grateful. Jae-sung laughed, harsh and ugly. You think I want your leftovers? Your charity. I've earned this position through loyalty and blood. Not because you decided to play father to some bastard children. Careful. The word came out soft, deadly. Or what? You'll kill me. Jae-sung stepped closer, emboldened by the watching council. You've gone soft, Hyung. Everyone can see it. The mighty Il-woo Kong, brought to his knees by a woman he should have eliminated months ago. I offered you a clean transition. A peaceful transfer of power. Il-woo's voice remained level despite the rage building in his chest. Take the empire. Rule it well. Just honor our agreement regarding my family. Your family. Jae-sung spat the words. You want me to let witnesses walk free? To allow the woman who's seen our operations, heard our conversations, knows our secrets to just disappear with your bastards? Do you think I'm stupid? The temperature in the warehouse dropped. Il-woo felt it. The shift, the moment when negotiation ended and violence became inevitable. The agreement was clear. My family remains untouchable. There is no agreement. Jae-sung pulled a gun, aiming it casually at Il-woo's chest. There's only this, you walk away with nothing, or you die here and I handle your loose ends personally. Either way, the foreign woman and those babies are a problem that needs solving. The council shifted uneasily. This had gone beyond posturing. Minho's hand moved toward his weapon, but Il-woo caught his eye and shook his head minutely. This was his fight. You're making a mistake, Il-woo said quietly. Am I? Jae-sung's finger moved to the trigger. I don't think so. I think I'm doing what you should have done months ago. I think I'm showing everyone here what real strength looks like. Il-woo smiled then, cold and terrible. You think I came here unarmed because I'm weak? You think I spent 3 weeks dismantling my empire without insurance? Confusion flickered across Jae-sung's face. What are you? The offshore accounts you were planning to seize? Frozen. The political contacts you need to operate? I've burned those bridges personally. The supply chains, the distribution networks, the protection payments. All of it requires my authorization to function. Il-woo took a step forward despite the gun. You wanted my empire? I'm giving you a kingdom built on sand. The moment I walk out that door, half of it collapses. You're bluffing. Am I? Il-woo gestured to the council. Ask them. Ask Minho. Ask anyone who's been watching the past 3 weeks. I've been dismantling my legacy brick by brick, making sure that if anything happens to my family, this entire organization burns with them. Jae-sung's gun wavered. You'd destroy everything out of spite? Not spite. Insurance. Il-woo's eyes were merciless. You have a choice. Let me walk away, honor our agreement, and I'll restore the systems before I leave. You'll have a functioning empire. Or refuse, and I'll make sure the next boss inherits nothing but ashes and enemies. The warehouse fell silent except for the sound of breathing and the distant hum of Seoul beyond the walls. You're insane, Jae-sung whispered. No. I'm a father protecting his family. Il-woo held out his hand. So what's it going to be? Do we end this peacefully, or do we both lose everything? The standoff stretched for an eternity. Jae-sung's gun remained pointed at Il-woo's heart, his face cycling through rage and calculation. Finally, One of the elder council members spoke. Lower the gun, Jae-sung. He's won. He's won nothing. He's outplayed you at every turn. The elder's voice held grudging respect. And he's offering you a kingdom. Take it before your pride destroys us all. Slowly, infinitely slowly, Jae-sung lowered the weapon. The hatred in his eyes could have melted steel. You have 48 hours, he said through clenched teeth. Restore the systems, transfer the authorizations, and get out of Korea. After that, if I ever see you again, our agreement is void. Il-woo nodded once. Done. He turned and walked toward the warehouse exit, every step away from his former life feeling like resurrection and death simultaneously. Behind him, he heard Jae-sung's voice, poisonous with rage. This isn't over, Hyung. Men like us don't get happy endings. Il-woo paused at the door, looking back one final time at the empire he'd built and the men he'd called brothers. Then I guess I'm not that man anymore. He stepped into the Seoul night, leaving Il Wukong the crime lord in that warehouse with the ghosts of who he used to be. Ahead, a car waited. Inside, a phone with a single message from Alicia. Come home. For the first time in 15 years, Il Wu knew exactly what home meant. And he'd burned an empire to find it. The bullets are flying and the end is near. This is the moment that defines them forever. Don't miss the miracle. Subscribe immediately and tell us your final predictions for Il Wu. The villa overlooked the Mediterranean, perched on cliffs that dropped into turquoise water so clear it looked like glass. 6 months since Seoul. 6 months since Il Wu had walked away from everything he'd built. 6 months of holding his breath, waiting for the shadows to find them. But the shadows never came. Morning light spilled through white linen curtains, painting everything gold. Alicia woke to the sound she'd never grow tired of. 2 tiny voices making those newborn sounds that weren't quite cries, just announcements of existence. She turned her head on the pillow to find Il Wu already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression that still caught her off guard. Peace. That's what his face held now. Not the carved tension of a crime lord. Not the brutal calculation of a man always 3 moves ahead of death. Just peace. They're awake, she murmured unnecessarily. I know. I've been listening to them for the past 20 minutes. His hand traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. Did you know Ji-yoon makes a different sound than her brother? Like she's annoyed before she's even fully conscious. Alicia smiled. She gets that from you. And Elijah has your stubbornness. He doesn't cry. He negotiates. Listen. They lay there in the sun-drenched room, listening to their twins wake up to a world that didn't know their father used to be a monster. Il Wu had changed everything about himself. His name was different now on paper. His hair longer and unstyled. His tattoos covered by long sleeves even in Mediterranean heat. But some mornings, Alicia caught glimpses of who he used to be in the way he checked exits or how his hand still moved toward a weapon that wasn't there. I'll get them, Il Wu said, kissing her forehead before sliding out of bed. He returned moments later with a baby in each arm, moving with the careful confidence of a man who'd spent 6 months learning how to be gentle. Ji-yoon's tiny fist was wrapped around his finger, and Elijah's dark eyes, so like his father's, tracked Il Wu's face with intense focus. Look who's awake, Il Wu murmured, settling back onto the bed. Ready to meet the day. Alicia reached for Ji-yoon, cradling their daughter against her chest. The baby was perfect. Coffee-colored skin, a shock of black hair, features that blended both her parents into something entirely new. Elijah squirmed in Il Wu's arms, and he adjusted automatically, his tattooed hands impossibly gentle against the baby's fragile body. I never thought. Il Wu's voice trailed off. What? That I could have this. That men like me got second chances. He looked at Elijah, then at Alicia, then at Ji-yoon. That I could hold my children without blood on my hands. Your hands are clean now. Are they? He flexed his fingers around Elijah's tiny body. I still dream about Seoul. About the warehouse. About all the choices that led here. His eyes met hers. Do you ever regret it? That alleyway. That I didn't just let you go. Alicia shifted Ji-yoon to look at him fully. Every day I'm grateful for that alleyway. Even though it terrified me. Even though it changed everything. Because it gave me you. Gave me them. She paused. Do you regret it? Giving up your empire? Wu was quiet for a long moment, looking down at his son. I thought I would. Thought I'd wake up one day and miss the power, the control, the respect. He kissed Elijah's forehead with devastating tenderness. But then Ji-yoon smiled at me for the first time last week, and I realized I never had real power until now. This is power. This moment. This family. Everything else was just fear dressed up as strength. The babies settled between them, creating a tiny universe in the sun-drenched bed. Outside, the Mediterranean sparkled with possibility. Inside, a former crime lord and the woman he'd chosen over his empire built their new legacy one quiet morning at a time. Minho called yesterday, Wu said casually, but Alicia caught the tension in his shoulders. While you were napping. Her stomach tightened. And Jae-sung's consolidating power. Making moves Wu Kong never would have made. The empire's changing. He paused. And there's been talk. What kind of talk? The kind that says maybe the great Wu Kong isn't really retired. Maybe he's just waiting. Watching. His jaw clenched. They don't believe a man like me can just walk away. Can you? The question escaped before she could stop it. Wu looked at her, and for just a moment, she saw the kingpin flash in his eyes. Sharp, calculating, dangerous. Then Elijah made a small sound, and Wu's expression softened immediately, the monster retreating behind the father. I don't know, he admitted quietly. I want to believe I can. That this is enough. That I've really changed. He touched Ji-yoon's tiny hand with one finger. But some nights I stand on that balcony and wonder if I'm fooling myself. If men built from violence can ever really escape it. A phone buzzed on the nightstand, the secure line only Minho had access to. Wu's eyes flicked to it, something predatory crossing his face before he forced himself to look away. Aren't you going to answer it? No. But his hand twitched toward the phone. That life is over. The phone continued buzzing. Once. Twice. 3 times. Each ring felt like a test. Alicia watched her husband, this man who'd given up everything for her, who held his children like they were made of starlight, who still sometimes woke at 3 a.m. reaching for weapons that weren't there. She watched him not answer the phone. Watched him choose them over the shadows calling him back. But she also saw the way his eyes tracked the phone. The way his shoulders tensed. The way some part of him would always be Wu Kong, crime lord, even if he never picked up that call. The buzzing stopped. The Mediterranean breeze drifted through open windows. Their twins made small sounds of contentment, unaware their father was at war with ghosts. I love you, Alicia whispered, because sometimes that was the only truth that mattered. I love you too. Wu kissed her, soft and desperate. More than power. More than legacy. More than. The phone buzzed again. And this time it didn't stop. Wu closed his eyes, his jaw tight, arms tightening around his son. In the sun-drenched bedroom, a family held each other while the past refused to stay buried. And somewhere across the world, in a Seoul warehouse where empires were born and bosses were made, Jae-sung smiled and made a call that would change everything. Because men like Wu Kong never really walked away. They just waited for the right reason to come back. Thank you for watching to the end. It means the world to us. Which part moved you most? Was it his final stand or the moment he held his babies? Tell us in the comments. If this story touched your soul, subscribe, like, and reshare this video. Help us spread the power of sacrifice. Tap the bell, and we'll see you in the next story.